My name is Rachel Bigsby. I'm a wildlife photographer specialising in seabirds, and this video is coming to you from the mighty Shetland Isles, where I have been working and playing over the summer, leading one of my photography workshops. Just like all of my favourite stories start, I hopped on a plane and headed north. I've ventured to Shetland before, and it holds a special place in my heart. The sense of freedom I feel there, the rugged landscapes and untamed nature allows you to truly connect with the environment in ways that I haven't experienced anywhere else before. The rich wildlife from seabirds to marine life adds to the day-to-day magic, and strong community values in Shetland create a real sense of belonging. I was so happy to stomp my feet on Shetland soil again, and after disembarking the plane, I jumped in my car and headed to the most northern part of the British Isles, a little island named Unst. Unst is one of the richest Viking heritage sites in Europe, and at 61 degrees north, the island was said to be the ideal resting spot for Norse travellers on trading routes between Scandinavia, Greenland and Newfoundland. After making myself at home and visiting a few of my favourite sites, I headed up to my favourite location in the whole of the British Isles. So I've just arrived at Hermaness National Nature Reserve, and I am so happy to be back. It's been 2 years since I was last in this location, and this place holds a lot of very special memories for me. It was of course where I documented a lot of the avian influenza crisis in northern Gannets for National Geographic, and also where I've captured some of my favourite photos, so I'm absolutely over the moon to be back here. I am dreading the hike up to Hermaness. It's pretty brutal, but fingers crossed that the photography will be well worth it. Let's have a look. Upon entering the reserve and disinfecting my feet, I began the long walk, and at last got my first glimpse of the best place on earth. Hermaness is Unst's northerly headland and is an important seabird colony home to northern gannets, Atlantic puffins, great skua, northern fulmar, gulls, shags and kittiwakes. I unpacked my camera and settled down on the cliff for a spot of photography, but as you can probably tell, the weather changed quite suddenly. A thick fog began to roll over the towering seabird cliffs, softening the rugged edges. The mist swirled around the rocky outcrops, blending sea, sky and stone, getting thicker and thicker until the cliffs almost disappeared.
So, as you can probably see, this hasn't really worked out as planned. It's magnificent nonetheless. It's dramatic and wild and everything that a gannet colony should be. I'm going to hold out for a little while longer just to see if it improves, but I might just have to come back later in the week and give it another try.
I waited a little longer, but the conditions didn't ease.
Well, I feel like overall that went well. I didn't really get the conditions I was hoping for, but when do we ever in wildlife photography? So I found a composition towards the end of my visit that was really nice. Essentially, it was two separate halves of the breeding colony with a big, dark, black crevice or kind of hole in the middle, and I was waiting for gannets to fly in front of that one specific area. Now I think they will come out quite nicely. The only real difficulty with working in these conditions is that it looks like you've got a dirty lens when it's foggy, especially when you're shooting on a telephoto lens. I was using the Nikon Z9 404.5, so we'll see how they brush up in Lightroom afterwards.
As I waited for the fog to burn off, I made my way to one of the most beautiful beaches on Shetland, where I sat and watched gannets diving for mackerel offshore. Eventually, the sun broke through and I photographed a wonderful little colony of Arctic terns, a remarkable seabird that migrates from the Arctic to Antarctic every year, and in its lifetime will travel the distance to the moon and back 3 times. I photographed as parents diligently fed fish to their precious chicks. Now, sand eels are particularly important for terns in the Northern Isles, and due to the low availability of other small, energy-rich fish species in the area, sand eels are the main prey fed to chicks. I was really happy to capture this particular image of an Arctic tern holding a sand eel delicately in its beak. I think that the out of focus wing in the foreground adds a dynamic sense of movement, subtly suggesting another tern's swift and graceful flight as they busily feed their chicks. The close-up perspective also emphasises the tern's focused gaze. And I think that the fish not only highlights the precision of these birds, but the curved and tapering shape of the sand eel, narrowing towards the tail, really complements the elegant lines in this image. And as always, when photographing Arctic terns, the bird's black cap contrasts beautifully with its pristine white plumage, creating a striking visual against the soft, blurred background. The following morning, I headed back up to Hermaness, and well, the conditions were absolutely perfect to help me capture the shot I had in mind earlier in the week. I unpacked my kit and got to work with the intention of adopting a low-key approach to photographing gannets over the colony in an environmental style.
So it's still pretty brutal up here today, but the light is so perfect for a shot that I was trying to capture yesterday but didn't manage to. So I'm looking at 100,000 seabirds on the cliff in front of me, and the sun is currently backlighting them. That means that some of the patches on the cliffs are in the shadow, so they're creating really nice black areas that the gannets are flying in front of, but the gannets are illuminated by the sun. So I'm really keen to capture that in my shot and to exaggerate those blacks that already exist. I'm underexposing in camera using my exposure compensation dials and waiting for the birds to end up exactly where I want them to.
I loved this particular composition and focused on capturing it for well over an hour. And the results may be one of my favourite photographs of gannets to date. I wanted to capture the velvety darkness, and so I intentionally waited for a solitary gannet to glide through the beam of light that cast a soft glow on the gannets perched behind. I really enjoyed photographing the interplay of light, and I think that the image captures a moment almost suspended between light and darkness. Further along the cliffs, I enjoyed northern fulmar dancing and swirling in the updrafts. Now, fulmars are often mistaken for gulls, but they are in fact a relative of albatross and belong to the tube-nosed family. Now, the word fulmar comes from Old Norse, meaning foul gull, referring to the foul-smelling stomach oil they spit as a defence mechanism. These birds are highly social and often ledge visit one another, where they vocalise and sing out their iconic cackling call. Northern fulmars are the most abundant seabird in Shetland, with over 250,000 breeding pairs. They are very long-lived birds, and they don't start breeding until they are 6 to 7 years old. They will lay a single egg and incubate it for 49 to 53 days before hatching. The chick is then fed a varied, regurgitated diet of fish offal, crustaceans and even jellyfish, before eventually fledging 50 days later in late August.
So So Shetland just is the gift that keeps on giving. Just while I was filming the Fulmar chicks, all excited in my little Fulmar dream world, I could hear a splashing behind me, and I turned around and there was a great skua bathing in this pool just here, and it put on such a display for me. Just can't believe it.
The great skua, known as bonksy in Shetland or pirate of the skies, is a dark brown, barrel-shaped seabird renowned for stealing fish from other seabirds, preying on puffins and dive-bombing anyone that comes near its nest. Despite their rather mean personality traits, great skua are one of my favourite birds. But very sadly, 75% of the great skua population was lost in 2022 as a result of avian influenza. Though much more research is needed, a small handful of great skua did breed again in Shetland this summer, and I hope that their numbers will only continue to grow. After leaving Hermaness, I revisited my favourite beach to reflect on the incredible few days that I've had.
So tonight is my last solo evening on Shetland because tomorrow I begin guiding a workshop for 7 days with my good friend Bryden Thomason at Shetland Nature. So I've just come out for one last evening alone in Shetland. As I arrived at the beach, I spotted an otter in the water, which I watched for about 5 minutes, but I'm back at the Arctic tern colony, as you can probably hear. The sun has gone behind the clouds, so I'm not photographing, I'm simply just watching with my binoculars. I use the Nikon M7 Plus binoculars and just taking in all the sounds, the smells, the sights. There's a beautiful female eider duck just cruising past with 4 little ducklings. It's just the most wonderful evening. It's a little bit nippy now, but nothing beats sitting out on a summer's evening watching Arctic tern chicks stretching their wings for the first time and parents diligently bringing back sand eels to feed the chick before heading back out to sea to fish again. I really hope that you can hear these Arctic terns. It's such a special place.
The following morning, I took a ferry back to the mainland for the start of my Shetland Seabirds photography workshop and met my wonderful group of workshop attendees as well as my friend, Shetlander and co-guide Bryden Thomason. We arrived in Lerwick, Shetland's capital, and embarked on our first boat trip of the workshop with Shetland Seabird tours to National Nature Reserve. We donned our life jackets and headed out to sea, where my head and heart began to fill with fond memories of my last visit, in which I captured my winning image in the natural artistry category of Wildlife Photographer of the Year, using the streaks of guano on the sandstone cliffs and some 22,000 courting gannets to my creative advantage. We soon caught our first glimpse of Noss, with the gannets overhead signalling our arrival. We toured the cliffs, positioning ourselves for the best angles and behaviours, creating some wonderful photographic opportunities. Northern gannets are the biggest seabird breeding in the UK, with a mighty 2-metre wingspan. They're big in size, but also so big in my heart, and the opportunity to fly alongside them at sea was truly something I will never forget. Later that evening, we took a private boat charter to Musa, an uninhabited island, which is home to the UK's largest European storm petrel colony, the smallest seabird in the world. These birds nest on the island in the tiny cracks and holes of an ancient broch that stands tall on the shore. And from within the broch, their unique and curious calls can be heard. petrels only come ashore to the breeding colonies under the cover of darkness, we had to wait until almost midnight for the magic to happen.
So we've just arrived on the island of Musa for a midnight storm petrel experience, and as you can probably tell from my face, I am so happy to be here. This is a trip that I've wanted to take part in for at least 5 or 6 years now, since I started developing my passion for seabirds, and I cannot tell you how happy I am to finally be here.
Before it got too dark, we explored the inside of the Brock and then hunkered down for the night. In the hours of twilight, these birds appeared from the sea, fluttering all around us like bats or fairies. Their tiny size is almost impossible to comprehend, and it was a truly magical experience for all. The following day, I had the pleasure of introducing my favourite location to my group at Hermaness National Nature Reserve once more. We had another very sunny day with great wind bringing the birds high into the sky, providing some eye-level opportunities to photograph the guga, the word for gannet chicks, before leaving to spend a few nights on the outer islands where we photographed otter, red-throated diver, snipe and more. This year, the colony is looking very different from the agonising scenes of avian influenza seen here in 2022 that I documented for National Geographic, destroying 54% of our gannet population. The avian influenza crisis devastated the gannet colonies, leaving thousands of birds dead. Their lifeless bodies were scattered across the once thriving cliffs. Empty nests and abandoned chicks bore silent witness to the tragedy, as the harsh reality of the outbreak turned vibrant seabird communities into scenes of sorrow and loss. Thankfully, the cliffs are alive again with the calls of gannets, though much more work is to be done. Toward the end of our workshop, we embarked on another unforgettable trip to Knoss, where we photographed a gannet diving frenzy. En route this time, we were accompanied by great skua as well as gannets and took a quick detour to photograph the staggering seabird cliffs as the sun rose above them before heading out into the North Sea for a wildlife photography spectacle that is not to be missed. Into the deep blue, the gannets pierce the water at speeds of up to 60 miles per hour. To avoid injury, gannets have remarkable adaptations which include muscles that are arranged to lock the vertebrae in place before entry, a lack of external nostrils which prevents water from being forced into the head, and air sacs under the skin that cushion the bird on impact. To help improve my photography of gannets underwater, I was kindly gifted a set of KASE Wolverine magnetic polarising filters from KASE. Now, I've not used filters before in my work, and I was pleasantly surprised at how the filter helped to minimise the reflections and also increase the intensity of the natural blue and green tones found in the water, whilst most noticeably increasing the contrast. And I think the results here speak for themselves. Now, a gannet diving frenzy is chaotic to say the least, and photographing it can be challenging. As usual in my work, I am drawn to simplicity and natural artistry, so I tried to isolate the gannets whilst capturing the chaos of the frenzy by using the splashes of water. In the end, I quite liked a slightly unique image of the top and bottom half of the gannets entering the frame, and how their positioning both mimics and complements the trail of water freeze-framed in the air to the right, left behind by another gannet. I also like how the dark ocean water and the splash creates a contrast with the bird's white plumage, and how my use of shutter speed adds a sense of motion to the scene. Yet again, this was an unforgettable experience with my most favourite seabird, and a real honour to fly alongside them once more on our journey back to the mainland. To finish our workshop on a high note, there was only one thing for it. We walked up to Sunborough Head Lighthouse and spent time photographing the nation's favourite seabird, the Atlantic puffin. As with all seabirds here in the UK, in the spring and summer, thousands of puffins gather in colonies on the coasts and islands of the North Atlantic Ocean to breed. They return to the same burrow every year and pair up with the same partner, with some puffin pairs together for over 20 years. After saying farewell to the island and the seabirds I love so dearly, my workshop and time on Shetland came to an end for 2024. And as I flew through the clouds, I reflected on what an incredible array of landscapes and wildlife we are so fortunate to have surrounding us in the British Isles. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel and head over to my website to discover more about my photography workshops, which I truly hope to see you on one day.